Good morning, Oklahoma. I'm Mark Johnson and welcome to Cow-Calf Corner. This week's topic is about drought and pasture management in the spring of 2023. We've obviously lived through some interesting times the past couple years with regard to lack of moisture, and it's the time of year when the grass begins to turn green and we can real easily fall prey to the temptation that it's time to turn out cows and we don't need the supplemental feed. And we want to resist that temptation just a little bit and take consideration of our soil and our plants and our cattle as we think about the long-term health of all three for the long-term benefit of our cow-calf operations. And so basically three things we want to talk about this week. And first thing we get into is the importance of weed control and herbicides as we look at the onset here. We know that continuous grazing and particularly drought are extremely stressful on the desired plant species that beef cattle like to consume. The normal thing we see in drought situations or continuous grazing is those preferred plant species, those plant species that are the most palatable for cattle to consume, will get grazed time and time again. The lush regrowth that occurs in them cattle will go back to time and time again, and we may have broadleaf weeds standing over here in our pasture right beside them that grow untouched to maturity and never have any grazing pressure put on them. And so at a time like this, as we think about the timely application of herbicides for weed control, we want to get this thing synced up right so that we are controlling weeds and getting those grasses that we want to grow off to a healthy and maybe a little bit of a head start as compared to the grazing pressure we're going to put on them. And so I encourage producers, read your product labels, consider what kind of herbicide products you're going to use, whether that is a pre-emergent, a post-emergent, is going to depend on when you need to get that applied for the benefit of your pasture. But I think we want to be ahead of the game with regard to weed control this spring to help our plants get off to a good start. Second thing, and along those same lines, we want to delay grazing until, and then there's a big question mark after the until. If we can, we really want to get those desired plant species up a few inches tall, depending on the type of grass. Is it Bermuda grass? Is it native range? Is it some other sort of improved grass we put in that we might need to get a little more growth and height on? But somewhere in a ballpark of 4 to 8 inches, if we can, to permit those grasses to get off and growing and healthy before we actually apply the grazing pressure to it. Well, obviously we want a soil test, and if there's other macronutrients that we need, we want to get those in our fertilizer mix too. But when it comes to the application of fertilizers this spring, this is the good news story. If you got native grass pasture, you don't need to worry about fertilizer application. But if we're dealing with improved grasses, something like Bermuda, Plains bluestem, maybe even crabgrass, we know that we've got to get fertilizer down for those in order for them to be productive. Our objective of fertilizer, even if we're still in a drought situation, is to have those soil nutrients down so that once the growing conditions are right in terms of moisture and soil temperature, we grow as much grass as possible in as short amount of time as possible. This year, I recommend splitting applications of fertilizer and maybe getting that fertilizer down a little bit earlier just for the sake of optimizing on those good growing conditions. So if we had 100 pounds we plan to put on sometime in a normal year in the month of May, this year by the 1st of May, we're going to put down about 50 pounds of actual nitrogen an acre, have it out there, ready for that grass to utilize whenever the growing conditions permit it. And as we follow through on that plan, we want to continue to monitor moisture situations and growing situations and continue to add fertilizer to that through split applications if we have a real optimum growing season for those improved grasses. So 3 points to consider relative to the drought we're in and pasture management this spring. I hope this helps, and thanks for joining us on Cow-Calf Corner.